So dentists, imagine this. You've seen a patient for 20 years. Gum disease? Absolutely. You've told them to see a periodontist only every single time they've come in. But over the years, you recognize that it's a bit like talking to a brick wall. They're really good-natured about it, right? But you know that you're just white noise. They aren't listening, but you're telling them because you care. You know you need to. You're hoping that they're going to listen, right? You're their trusted provider. You like them. I mean, you have this developed relationship with them, right? And unfortunately, you are not making detailed notes about these conversations. It feels more just kind of like banter. Feels like conversations. Feels like, oh, here it is again, just kind of reminding them this time, right? And so those are not really going into your clinical notes. The discussing, the diagnosing, the advising. It's just not really going in there.
But then that same patient moves. Bummer, right? You're going to miss your long-term patient. They see a new dentist and they hear the same thing about their gum disease. But this time something clicks. They take it seriously and they actually take the advice.
And suddenly you are being accused of negligence.
And you're sitting there going, what? But I told them over and over again. But did you? The notes don't say that. So did you even say it at all?
So that's today's conversation. If it's not documented, it did not happen. Let's talk about how clinical notes can protect you or leave you completely exposed.
Welcome to the Truth Decay Podcast, talking dollars and cents with Sara Baker and LaRae McMullen.
So to start, I want to talk about a real life case study that I found. And we started actually to talk about it a little bit in the intro, in the example. And I picked it because it feels really common and I kind of felt like it might sound familiar to somebody listening. So Dr. E, who is a general dentist, and he treated patient L for 20 years. So L had diabetes, smoked, and had clear signs of progressing periodontal disease. Okay. So at each visit, Dr. E says that he went over L's health history, right? So including habit of smoking, how it was contributing to worsening symptoms of perio disease. Dr. E said that he always talked with him, offered referrals to a periodontist like every single time. But the kicker was none of it was ever written down.
Right. So Dr. E never documented in the clinical notes these talks that they had. Not the content, not the diagnosis, the observations, nothing. Not a single perio charting. Not one refusal noted. No documentation of education or progression of disease. Just a vague note that says something like scaling or cleaning. Possibly even the template note that, those template notes that they put in that are associated with the practice management software.
So then patient L moved. And he found a new dentist. And the new dentist said, wow, you have severe periodontal disease. You need surgery and implants. And for whatever reason, this information, it just hit differently. And L went to the periodontist. Like it wasn't just white noise. He heard it and he was ready to act.
Yeah, and more than that, after L goes to that periodontist and is told the extent of their diagnosis and the treatment that is needed, he's furious. He insists that he had no idea. Mm-hmm. No one ever told him how bad it was. He didn't understand what he had, etc., etc. He ended up suing Dr. E for negligence.
Again, bear in mind, this really happened.
Yeah.
Dr. E swore under oath, I told him every year. He never wanted to quit smoking. It was the same conversation every single time. And I'm sure that a lot of dentists listening to this probably have very similar conversations, right? Like I remember working in a dental office, overhearing very similar conversations. Dr. E said, I told him over and over again. It was the same conversation every single time. I told him over and over. He didn't want to spend the money. I gave him the same referral at least 10 times. But when asked to show in the chart where he said all these things, crickets. Nothing. No record of these conversations at all.
Yeah. And since there's no clinical notes, the jury didn't and honestly couldn't, without those notes, they couldn't buy it. So Dr. E had no written record, no evidence that he did what he claimed, and he lost big, all because of some missing notes.
The big takeaway here is that if you don't document refusals, diagnoses, treatment discussions, they never happened in the eyes of the court or an insurance carrier.
Yep. And don't forget, even if you did say it, if you didn't chart it, you have zero protection. This applies to either a legal situation or a claim audit situation where you're trying to appeal for payment or trying to justify treatment in the event of an audit.
Yeah, like real talk, it doesn't even have to be that deep in terms of like getting sued. It can also just be you could diagnose something and have like a really good reason for doing a crown or doing something that under different circumstances, you could absolutely get paid for it from the insurance company. But if we doing billing don't have those clinical notes, or we don't have the ability to look back and provide that documentation upon appeal or whatever, like you're just leaving money on the table.
Exactly.
So,
you can't appeal when you don't have that information in written form.
Yeah. So okay, LaRae. So that being said, like we deal with dental billing every single day. And we deal with many situations where we think, oh, no problem. Like that appeal, honestly, probably should be a slam dunk. Like we'll just go check the clinical notes.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. Like, or we get a letter from the carrier saying that like perhaps a crown has been downgraded to a filling, which is wild. And we need to provide detailed clinical notes to substantiate the dental necessity of the crown versus like the, a filling. And the notes absolutely stink.
Exactly. So let's talk about the 3 big reasons why your clinical notes are more than just a formality. They're financial, legal, and operational necessities, and can actually be a bonus for your patient experience too.
Yeah. So first up, like we said, insurance claims. So you need detailed clinical notes in order to get your claims paid, like to have a shot at successful appeals and to protect yourself in case your treatment or diagnosis or lack thereof is called into question, right? So like ultimately have detailed clinical notes that show medical necessity, like period. It's very simple. It's very straightforward, not just what you did, but why you did it.
Yeah. Why? Yep. Most claim denials we see aren't because treatment wasn't needed. It's because the treatment is hopefully, right, provided because the dentist diagnosed a problem and the treatment is necessary. But usually, unless there's something administratively missing, the denial comes because the submitted documentation, it just doesn't meet the criteria for necessity according to that patient's plan. So every plan is different. Certain things can be covered with certain, necessities or criteria of the plan. So sometimes you're out of luck and that claim is what we call unappealable, max met, processing policy issues, something like that. But sometimes if the note gives you something solid, you've got a real shot at an appeal and you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If it's appealable, let's give it a shot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of crown completed on number 30, like give us fractured cusp, patient symptomatic, radiographic evidence of decay beneath existing restoration. Like give us those things. That's something that we can start to work with. And that's not a ton of effort, right? But like that gives us something that we can work with versus crown completed. Like the posting tells us that the crown was completed, right? So
yeah, it might take a tiny bit more time, but getting those in there, those notes, they tell a story, even briefly. Those notes get claims approved. So notes that just echo the code fast track to denial, from what we've seen anyways. Yeah. And they definitely make it harder to justify treatment down the road.
So that actually brings us to a very common mistake, which is offices that rely on the auto-generated templated notes that come with the procedure code.
Yep, exactly. Those canned notes are usually missing key details or they're just way too generic. I mean, they see these all the time. They come with the practice management software. They can identify those. They feel like enough because they're kind of explaining what the code is, but they're absolutely not. The ADA even warns against using these.
Exactly. So the ADA actually says that if you use templates or smart phrases, you must customize them with tooth-specific and procedure-specific details. Otherwise, they can actually trigger audit red flags.
And one of the best tools for consistent customized notes is the SOAP format, the SOAP format. It stands for subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. It gives you structure without making your notes sound and feel robotic.
Yes, and again, this is from the ADA, so anybody can just go look this up, but
Yep.
Here's how it works. So subjective is what the patient tells you. Objective is what you clinically observe. Assessment is your diagnosis, and plan is your treatment recommendation. Very straightforward. You can actually build this into your templates that get posted, and this takes a little bit of work. It's a little bit of front-loaded work, but man, if you're able to work with which you're required to do, as we said, if you work with your templates, you make them more robust, you add in the materials that you use, right? So you don't have to fill those out every time. You're using those so you can just kind of fill in those details. You're eliminating so much of the work, right? Like it's going to make it so much more streamlined. So,
right. And SOAP works for every type of visit, but it is especially helpful in emergency appointments or complex cases because it keeps your notes logical, patient-centered, and easy to defend.
Yes. So reason number 2 for clinical notes being very important, legal protection. So if your notes don't show the clinical decision-making, patient's refusal, risks discussed, you've exposed yourself to big weak spots in your documentation that you cannot in the future go back and defend yourself for.
Courts and boards, they don't care what you meant or remembered that you told a patient. They care what you wrote down. They have to see that proof, right? You can say you remembered or meant anything, but you need to write these things down. And templated generic notes that sometimes are not even fully thought out and are filled out and they're kind of blanked out in certain places, they're not going to save you.
You know, I do actually want to mention here, we're talking about refusals. Something that comes to mind, like x-ray refusals, are fairly common, right? And we would highly recommend that you have it documented not only in the notes explicitly that the patient has refused x-rays for whatever reason, that you discussed why you need them. You need them for diagnostic purposes. Patient refuses, right? Note it in your clinical notes, but also have something that the patient signs that you scan into their chart that you keep.
Right.
But putting it in the clinical notes, like in detail as to what the discussion was like and what the patient said, is going to be extremely important down the line. If something happens, treatment related clinically to this patient as a result of them refusing x-rays, which again is their choice, but it needs very important that you kind of
document,
write down what your role in that decision was, right? And it actually brings up another point, this discussion, because LaRae, whenever we're choosing topics to do for this podcast, usually there's kind of one aspect of it that we encounter over and over again that inspires sort of like the rest of the podcast. Another huge risk of this legal protection issue is clinical notes that are written way after the fact, sometimes even weeks later. And this is something that kind of honestly a little bit inspired this entire podcast, because this is the issue that we actually see way more than we should.
Yeah, we actually see this kind of scarily often, honestly. The team lets clinical notes stack up, and then someone, usually the doctor, will sit down to back enter a week's worth of treatment. It's inefficient. it can oftentimes be inaccurate. And honestly, it's a massive liability.
Because you're relying on your memory from last week on a weekend.
Several weeks ago.
Yeah. Like on a weekend or late at night to post-treatment and fill out like substantive clinical notes. And if you're trying to remember however many patients you saw over the past week, 100, 150, just in terms of like your exams too, right?
Right.
It's not documentation, it's guesswork at that point. And that's not what you want for your clinical notes.
No, because documentation, it happens in real time or as real time as possible. Like we know you get busy and sometimes you might have to see another patient right away, but as real time as possible, same day, if not during that appointment, then immediately after, while the details are fresh in your head. And it's not just about compliance, it's about protecting yourself and your business and your license.
Yes. And so again, the issue that we see often, right, especially in billing, the thing that I kind of want to mention here is that your practice management software, a lot of them have mechanisms that involve closing or locking your system. So they have these mechanisms in practice management softwares like Dentrix, like EagleSoft, right? Dentrix is a really good one to point to, actually. And you do your monthly close and it kind of locks everything for that month, right? Yeah. And so it'll lock all the procedures in place so you kind of can't delete them. And Dentrix has changed over the years, so you can keep the clinical notes unlocked separately from the procedures. Like I know that that's a thing that you can do now, but I just really, really want to discourage you from keeping anything unlocked. Like I really want to encourage everybody to develop systems. Systems will save you, so that you can just do these things on a regular basis. And these systems are just rolling and you can lock them on a regular basis because those locking capabilities are to protect you. It's to make it so that like it's to make it so that stuff can't be deleted on accident. Stuff can't be changed on accident. At best on accident. Right. At worst by someone who is trying to cause you harm, right? Without you knowing it, deleting things, changing things from the past, right? If you don't have a system for effectively posting your clinical notes, you might not have a system for effectively making sure that stuff isn't getting changed from the past, after right?
Yeah.
So it's just, and ultimately too, like when we see those, because it's so overwhelming in those situations to hold on to those postings until the weekend, until weeks in the future, right? And it just kind of starts stacking and it's just spiraling. You're losing cash. Like you're losing cash flow at that point. We're not able to send claims until all at once, right? And then everything kind of comes in a big wave. And then there's all this stuff that you have to deal with. And if you don't have if you don't have your systems on lock, you probably don't have an awesome system for dealing with all of those denials and inquiries that come in, right? So those aren't going to necessarily be effectively taken care of. So just systems will save us all. They just will. So we see it all the time. Please stop doing that. Lock your systems, make your clinical notes, floss, right? All those things.
I mean, I know we talked about systems a lot, but about the locking thing, honestly, if anyone wants, we could literally do a whole episode on this. It's such an issue. Yeah. Let us know if you want to hear some more information on the pros. I don't really think there's too many cons, maybe a little bit of extra work, but there's so many pros on locking your systems and why you should close your month and all that kind of stuff. But let us know. Yeah. We can definitely do a full episode if you want.
Yeah. Cause there's stuff that's going on in your system, like your AR not being accurate.
Yeah.
There are accounts that are not getting statements and that are not being reported to you because you are not closing your months and locking your systems appropriately. Yep. So, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Post your clinical notes. You know what I'm saying? So, third reason. And this is kind of the bonus reason we mentioned, like it's tied in, clinical continuity. So it's a little bit of a sleeper reason, but it's the one that improves your patient care and your systems.
Yeah, so clinical notes help your entire team stay aligned. For instance, if the hygienist sees or hears something important, the next provider or team member that the patient interacts with will also need that information. So same with temps, new docs, team transitions, any new person coming in, they're going to need to see that documentation. So document it.
I mean, things like, obviously allergies, right? I mean, clinical things, right? Clinical things, but also beyond that, great notes improve patient experience. That's the bonus.
Yeah.
They feel remembered. They feel understood. I worked with a doctor. I did his billing for about, over a decade, probably close to 11, 12 years. And one thing that I always really admired about him was that he was so diligent about, talking to his patients, learning about their lives, and then he would write down what, the important things about what he had talked to them about. And so the next time they came back, he would say, "How was your trip to Disneyland? Hey, what grade did you get in that class that you were really excited about?" And they were always like, how did he remember that? Right? Like, how could he possibly remember that, I was really excited about my trip to Italy or whatever, right? And I mean, the truth is that he did the work. He wrote it down. It's not like he just remembered, because he would review it before he went in and sat down with them, right? But I do remember everybody loving talking to him and just thinking he was the sweetest thing in the world. And he was. Because of those clinical notes, right? Yeah. And it was because of the diligent note-taking that he took and the care he took. And I was always so impressed with that.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to go in and feel remembered and seen by somebody who sometimes people can be scared of, right?
Yeah.
Turn it into a great patient experience.
Well, and it made them trust him, right?
Yeah.
And I think it improves case acceptance because it just strengthens the relationship. It makes you feel like this person knows me. And it just contributes to the concept that, like, he's recommending these things to me because he cares about me as a person. And he's not just trying to bilk me for my savings, right? Like, he wants me to have the best care possible. And it's just the whole deal, right? I think we've mentioned this before, too. Like, there's a lot of choice with dentistry, right? I mean, there's a dentist on every corner. And so things like that set you apart and make patients feel seen and heard and the trust, like, why wouldn't you do that? So it's just one more reason that you should, make sure those clinical notes are being utilized.
100%. Okay, so we've actually built a downloadable based on the ADA's SOAP process and smart phrase guidance. So it'll walk you through how to use structure and customization together. You can grab it in the show notes on our podcast website.
Yep. So ultimately, clinical notes are your receipts. They're your memory. And we don't want it to be, but it could be your legal armor. So if it feels like you're writing too much detail, it's probably just enough, honestly.
Yeah. If you think I'll remember this later, you probably won't. So develop a system to chart it while it's still fresh in your head.
Yep.
All right, Sarah. So we're at that point in the show. What are our top takeaways for today?
So number 1, clean, efficient claims start with clean, efficient notes. So tell the story of necessity. Don't just echo the code.
Right. Number 2, notes should be timely, personalized, and documented by someone trained, not batched days or even weeks later.
We've seen it. Number 3, your notes are your best defense. At best, times you need to substantiate treatment, or at worst, defend yourself in legal disputes. So if it's not in the chart, it did not happen. Nope.
And this is number 4, auto-generated notes and templates are not sufficient documentation. So don't settle for those. You need context, detail, and clinical reasoning. Again, think about that SOAP process and go grab that off our downloadable. That'll help you a lot.
Absolutely. And number 5, great notes make for great patient experiences. They help you build continuity, trust, and tailored treatment.
Yep.
So, LaRae, what are 2 action steps that our listeners can take right now?
So I would say number 1, review 1 week's worth of notes and flag anything that is undocumented. So just start kind of looking in there and seeing how you're doing things. Review them and flag anything that is undocumented. Number 2, download the clinical notes power checklist and review it with your team at the next huddle.
Yeah, make sure everybody knows it, sees it, heck, ask your team what they think of the clinical notes. I mean, honestly, I think we've said this before in other podcasts too, like talk to your team. Your team can have some really good insights on processes in your office that, you may not have thought about before, but they could have thought about and they have some opinions on. So, be open to your team giving you some feedback about those things.
100%. And like us being a third party billing company, I have actually given feedback to some of our clients that we see out at conventions and stuff that, about their, I specifically am thinking of this one client we have that when we got in there, I was like, oh my gosh, their notes are fantastic. And I definitely wanted to tell them when I saw them again, because it's so common that we see notes that kind of are a little bit generic or don't leave a whole lot for us to appeal. So as Sara said, if you're talking to your team about it, if you have an in-house team that does billing, or anything else, doesn't even have to be billing, but like something that they're trying to, talk to the patient or whatever about, and the notes just aren't filled out, they'll be able to give you that feedback, because I know for us, we definitely can give the feedback from a different perspective. We're not looking from a clinical perspective per se, I guess. I mean, I guess it is kind of clinical, but we're looking to find that information. We weren't in the mouth. We weren't with that patient. We're looking to see it documented so that we can use that to get these procedures actually paid. So definitely check in with your team.
Yeah.
All right. So Sara, what are our final thoughts for today?
So no one became a dentist to spend hours and hours writing notes. And that's not what we're saying. But documentation is what will protect you, your income, and your sanity.
Mm-hmm. Your charting is your shield. So it's your shield. Write like your license depends on it, because sometimes it actually does.
Yep. Yeah. So thank you for listening to the Truth Decay podcast. Please don't forget to grab your checklist in the show notes, share it with your team. If you like what you heard today, please consider subscribing on whatever platform you're listening on. You can send us an email at hello@thetruthDecayPodcast.com or check us out at sddentalsolutions.com. We would love to answer your questions, address any issues. Literally anything you want to talk about. Let's go.
Yeah, give us some episode ideas, guys.
Hell yeah.
All right. And if you're a social media user, you can find us on LinkedIn, and you can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, come and find us.
Yep. And thank you all again so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.